Hi everyone. So this is Priya Vashne and I welcome you all to the new session. In this video, we are going to cover the Plato's theory of philosopher king. Since from the starting, I have told you that uh, his theory on philosopher king is one of the greatest work for which Plato is known for, right? Whatever we had studied so far, that is his theory of souls, his theory of idea, his theory of justice, etc., his theory of education, everything was for, or you can say, for his theory of philosopher king. Because ultimately, in one way or the other, he was actually trying to reach the conclusion that philosopher king should be the king, right? I mean, a philosopher should be the king. Is it clear? Okay. So, the main statement, right, in his, or you can say the statement which actually reflects his theory of philosopher king is this, that is, for no law or ordinance is mightier than knowledge. Plato, right? So, what does this implies? That for no law or ordinance is mightier than knowledge, or you can say is greater than knowledge. So, what exactly this statement is telling is this statement is basically justifying, or you can say that his theory of philosopher king is basically the justification of the absolute powers of a philosopher king. Do you remember his theory of justice, in which we have the two fundamental principles were, number one was the functional specialization and the second was the non-interference, right? So in his theory of philosopher king, what, or you can say in this statement, what is he trying to say is that he is basically justifying the absolute powers of the philosopher king, right? So this is basically the, you can say, when if you get a question on as like that for no law or ordinance is mightier than knowledge, Plato just commented, or you can say basically you will, if you will get the statement based question, then this is going to be your introduction. Next, again, what was the context? What was the context? The context was to make Athens an ideal state. Basically, he wants to, again, there was an influence of Socrates, everything which we had basically discussed in our previous videos as well. Right? Now, now the question is that why he is basically justifying that the absolute powers of a philosopher king. So, before answering that, just try to remember that who is a philosopher? Who is a philosopher? So, as Plato has stated, that philosopher is a symbol of knowledge and sacrifice, right? And hence he has proven abilities. Is it clear? So, we all know that a philosopher is a symbol of knowledge. Therefore, what he's trying to say is that um, since he is the symbol of knowledge, therefore, there should not be any limitation on the powers of the philosopher king, except he says that there should be no limitations on the power of a philosopher king except to change the constitution of republic. तो कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन चेंज करने के अलावा ही देयर शुड नॉट बी एनी लिमिटेशन, right? Why? Because he says that a philosopher king need not to be concerned about the public opinion or the book of laws. Why? Because A philosopher king is a symbol of knowledge, right? He is a man of reason. Let me just go to the next slide. What he says is that a philosopher king is a man of reason, right? Man of reason and a symbol of sacrifice. Therefore, what Plato says, just listen to it. Therefore, it will be foolish to question his wisdom. Wisdom. What he also says is, hence, it will be foolish to limit the expert practitioner of medicine with a book, right? With a book of medicine. So this is what is philosophy, what is theory of philosopher king is. So what he said is, since with his previous theories, he has already established that a philosopher is a symbol of knowledge and sacrifice. A philosopher is a person. A philosopher is a person in whom reason dominates, and in order to establish Athens as a virtuous state, it is important for it to be ruled by wisdom, to be ruled by a person who in whom reason dominates, right? Because only that person will be able to do the justice. Therefore, he says that there should be the institution of a philosopher king. Now, after proving his point that there should be an institution of a philosopher king, he is also giving uh, he's also saying that okay, we have instituted the philosopher king, but it is also important to not put any limitations on the power of a philosopher king except to change the constitution of the republic. Is it clear? Why he is saying that there should be no limitation? Because he's saying that a philosopher is a symbol of knowledge. He is the man of reason and he is an expert in his field. Therefore, it will be very foolish to question his wisdom. He has completed the intense training of 15 years, 50 years, right? So he says that it will be foolish to limit an expert practitioner of medicine with a book of medicine. I hope this is clear to you. Now comes the part of critical evaluation. Now I'm going to I'm going to introduce all of you to Aristotle. See, we all know that Plato was the disciple of Socrates, while Aristotle was the disciple of Plato. It has been said that Aristotle is one of the uh, biggest disciple of Plato as well as the biggest critic of Plato, right? Now, what Aristotle says on this, right? What Aristotle says is, according to Aristotle, law is a reason without passion. We all study these statements when we will study Aristotle. So, after Plato, we will be studying Aristotle, right? So, what Aristotle says is that Aristotle has just actually justified the rule of law over the rule of person, right? According to Aristotle, not only law and reason are same, but rule of law has many advantages over the rule of person, right? What he says is that not only rule of law and law of reason is same, but also rule of law has many advantages over the rule of person. This you will understand in detail when we will study Aristotle. But for now, it will be enough for you to mention here, right? Okay. So what Aristotle says is that in reality, it is almost impossible. It is almost impossible to find a philosopher king. According to Aristotle, philosopher king is nothing but a utopia, right? He says that ultimately the rule of a philosopher king will be the rule of tyranny, right? Why? Because as per Aristotle, that wisdom of many is always preferable over the wisdom of a person or of one person. Since law represent the wisdom of ages, right? Therefore, it will always be relevant, or you can say rule of law will always be relevant than the rule of a person or the rule of a philosopher king, right? So he also admits, right? Aristotle also admits that rule of law may have some issues, some limitations, that the rule of law may have some limitations. For example, a law may be rigid, right? Or it may also be silent in some situations. However, however, for Aristotle, for Aristotle, one should never, one should never sacrifice the good for the sake of the best. Is it clear? Why? Because best is always unachievable, right? So, this is how Aristotle actually, you can say, criticizes the views of Plato, or uh, the act of Plato of giving unlimited, or you can say absolute powers to the philosopher king, right? So I just revise it. So how what we have studied is, according to Aristotle, law is a reason without passion, right? So as per the Aristotle, not only the law of reason is equal to the rule of law, but rule of law has many more advantages over the rule of reason. All that we will study when we study Aristotle, but for now you need to understand that Aristotle prefers rule of law over the rule of person. Why? Because according to Aristotle, it is almost impossible to find a philosopher king in reality, because for Aristotle it is a utopia. According to him, the rule of philosopher king will ultimately turn into the rule of tyranny, right? So it is always preferable, the wisdom of many is always preferable over the wisdom of one person. So as per Aristotle, our laws actually represent the wisdom of ages, right? Therefore he is the strong proponent of the rule of law. Is it clear? He also admits that there may be some limitations in the rule of law. For example, the law may be rigid or it may be silent in some cases, but for Aristotle, we should never sacrifice good for the sake of the best, because best is always unachievable. Is it clear? So now we have actually critically evaluated also this statement. So what happened is, after listening to this critic of Aristotle, Plato himself has modified his views on this. So in his book the laws, Plato has reestablished the rule of law, right? Hence it is also said that Aristotle's ideal state, which is nothing but the rule of law, is Plato's second best state, right? Is it clear? Now comes the conclusion part, right? Now comes the conclusion part to this statement. Now, how do you conclude this statement based question? So, what you can write is that we should acknowledge the wisdom. So you can actually put here the Constitution of India, right? So so who were the makers of the Constitution of India, right? They were actually the brilliant minds, right, who actually made the Constitution of India. So what you can write here is that we should acknowledge the wisdom of the makers of Constitution of India, who did not approve the rule of a person, right? We don't have the dictatorship, right? Who did not approve the rule of the person over the rule of law. So basically, there are many developing countries which have this concept of rule of person, right? For example, Iran, right? The supreme leader of Iran can be compared with the Plato's philosopher king. This is how you can conclude it. So at last, you can also write that the rule of a person usually ultimately results into into some sort of dictatorship. So this is what the theory of philosopher king of Plato. I hope you have understood it. So now we are almost at the end of the series of lectures in the Plato. After this, we will discuss the Plato's theory of communism, and after that, we will actually evaluate Plato as a thinker, right? And then we will start with Aristotle. So if you have liked this video, then please don't forget to share and subscribe and like this video. Okay, so thanks a lot for your time. Thanks a lot. Bye bye. Take care.